On today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, we're diving into if the LA Clippers are legitimate title contenders and why you should not overlook this old squad.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast on this Saturday night. I'm Rylan Stiles. Joining me is Gavin, Schall, your Saturday night duo to talk all things NBA. And it is still the offseason, so we're looking for other angles to take with game night each and every night. And Gavin, you and I, texting back and forth, have figured out that we want to talk about the LA Clippers. Go check out Locked On Clippers. Darian does a great job. He can sell you on the Clippers, but I don't think that we need to be sold, Gavin. Are they legitimate title contenders?
So, Rylan, we might disagree because I think I do need to be sold. I am not to skip ahead to buy or sell. I am not buying the idea that these Clippers are legitimate title contenders. And I want to be clear. I'm not totally throwing it out either. I can get there. You mentioned the age, a little tongue in cheek. I don't take it so tongue in cheek. Like let's go through this. Kawhi Leonard, 34 years old, finished finished the season healthy exactly once in the last 5 years now. That's concerning to me. James Harden flopped again in the playoffs. He'll be 36 by the time the playoffs start. Brook Lopez will be 38 by the time the playoffs start. CP3, you get to the second round, he'll be 41. Right now he's 40. Nick Batum turns 37 halfway through the season. Bradley Beal, the health is not really there at 32 years old. He hasn't played over 53 games in the last 4 years. He hasn't played over 60 in the last 6 seasons. And I frankly think they exchanged him, to be fair. Also, with the addition of John Collins, you could say that's certainly a win in the aggregate. I kind of think Norman Powell's just a better player at this point. He was 24-4 on 50, 43, 82 splits in 43 games before he got hurt last season. I thought he was exceptional last year. I think that's a big loss for them. I agree with the premise that they are, on paper, probably the deepest team in the NBA. Darian talked about it. They can very easily go 11 deep, and we can go through the rotation, and we can talk through the rotation. I think they have every chance, even with the injury risks, to be an exceptional regular season team. I just don't know how you bank on this team, even with that depth, to put 4 rounds together. And because of that, I personally cannot call them a legitimate contender, even if the talent is there and even if the depth is there.
So I like the way that you frame that. I would push back on Darian that they're not the deepest team in the NBA. That's still resides.
He didn't say that. I'm saying they have an argument for that.
Yeah, I think they have an argument.
Probably the podcast you do is probably the right answer.
They have an argument. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if you take away the one that actually is the deepest, then they're the deepest, which I would agree with at that point. If you're not judging teams based on OKC, then they do have the deepest team in the NBA. To me, it comes down to how would you define legitimate? If the legitimacy of someone's title chances rests solely on the fact that it could happen, if everything lines out perfectly, and if you dreamed up the best case scenario for that season, it can end in a title, then I do think that they have a legitimate case. If your criteria for being a legitimate contender is, hey, regardless of what you get thrown at you throughout the season, whether it be a hiccup on the injury list here or whether it be a bad spell there, you're going to find a way to come out of that as champions. You look at last year's champions in OKC. The postseason did not go perfectly for them. Not only did J-Dub play on a torn ligament, but they shot the ball horrendously. They shot from beyond the arc, a clip that you should not be able to win in the modern NBA, a championship, but because they were so good defensively, it allowed them to survive the NBA playoffs. So the Thunder didn't have everything go right for them. You have Boston and you have Denver, who also had to fight through some adversity. So we know that to be a true champion, you have to battle through adversity. So I would just take this and say, of all the teams in the NBA, the Clippers are one team that I think has a path to a title. Whereas, like the Jazz and the Pelicans and other teams around the NBA, there's just no chance that they win a championship. There's zero. It's at 0%. So by token of having the perfect path, to me, you have to be considered contenders because the bracket could break perfectly for you. We see it every year where, perhaps a team is undervalued in the regular season. They come in as the lower seed and end up winning that series, and then someone else gets upset, and now things really open up for them. You look at even Oklahoma City this year, who had the same thing open up for them when it comes to the playoff bracket, where they were left facing a Pacers team that was a spunky upset group. They were left facing the Timberwolves, and then they did have to go through Denver, who was all beat up and broken down. So the fact that the Clippers have a path to a championship, to me, makes them true contenders, but there are a lot of ifs. Like James Harden is a question mark. Can he really be good for 4 rounds in the playoffs? That seems unrealistic. So who can step up alongside of him? Can Kawhi truly play 2 months straight of high-intensity basketball? That's a big question mark. Bradley Beal's a good addition. I think that Bradley Beal will have his entire public perception to a 180 with this move, considering where his price tag was and where it is today. But I'm glad you highlighted Norman Powell. Norman Powell is a fringe all-star, capable of stepping up any given night, and I think he was more additive to their defense than what Beal will be, and their defense was really good last year. So how much can he replace Norman Powell? And then you have John Collins and Brook Lopez, who adds into what I think is one of the best front courts, if not the best front court in the NBA, because of who Zoo is as a center and because of what he does down low. Chris Paul, I think, is a sneaky addition. I know he's old, but he played all 82 games a year ago, and this is someone who can really set the table and get Kawhi into his spots at the elbow in the mid-range with dump-in passes and entry passes that allow him to have easy face-ups and take advantage of Kawhi as a scorer. And then you talk about their depth. I think Boban is incredible. I think that Derrick Jones Jr. is incredible. Nick Batum is serviceable, and he can get hot in the playoffs. And then Chris Dunn is what holds it all together with his level of defense for this specific team. So the way that there is a path for them to be a title contender and a path for them to win a championship, to me, signifies that they're contenders. But unlike teams like Denver and Oklahoma City, everything has to go right. Whereas with OKC and Denver, I think that they can handle a few blips in the radar and a few missteps along the way.
Yeah, I think look, I was getting at this earlier. It's just hard when you don't have any faith in their 2 best players. And to be clear, with Kawhi, that is entirely about his health, because I think if you were to wipe that off, which you can't, like, he is arguably the playoff performer of, I don't know, like his career essentially in the NBA. Like maybe this side of LeBron, maybe this side of Steph Curry, but like he is in rare air in terms of his actual production. Like that 2020-21 run until he gets hurt against the Jazz, like 30 points, 8 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 57% from the field, 40% from 3. Like he was absurd. And then the next year when they play the Suns, like he would look like he was going to upset the Suns, like single-handedly. He was putting up 35 a game through the first 2 games of that series. And like none of that is to crap on Kawhi, but you look at how his seasons end every year, and it is injury after injury after injury. Like 2020, they lose in the bubble. 2021, he tears his ACL. 2022, he misses the whole season. 2023, they're tied 1-1 with the Suns. He tears his meniscus. 2024, he plays just 2 games against the Mavs before missing the rest of the series with right knee inflammation. And then even in this series against the Denver Nuggets, like he tapers out a little bit at the end. I mean, he gets to the line and he shoots 9 free throws, so that's great, but he takes 13 shots in that game 7, in a game they lose by 19. James Harden shoots 2 for 8 in that game. Like, I don't really know how at this point in your career you can rely on those 2 guys. And that just makes it really, really hard in a Western Conference that is this good, this competitive. Like they could be an exceptional regular season team. I don't really see a world, barring injuries, where they don't have a very competitive first round opponent. Like Oklahoma City is clearly in their own class. I think the Clippers could beat any of Denver, Houston, Minnesota, Golden State, the Lakers, or the Mavs. But I also think all those teams could beat them. Like I don't see a world where their first round series is not 50-50. And we've seen that from them the last couple of years, where they were either slight favorites or they were like expected to be competitive against a good team, and they lose because you can't rely on Kawhi to stay healthy. And at least for the last 2 years, you can't really rely on James Harden for much of anything consistently in the postseason. He has moments. He was fantastic in Game 6 in the first round this year. I don't want this to be all negative. So let's quickly list some of the positives on my end for the Clippers. We mentioned the depth. Ivica Zubac is just one of the more underrated players in the NBA. There were multiple like all-in-one advanced stats that painted him as a top 20 player in the NBA. He was 12th in EPM. He was 17th in LeBron. He was 9th in WAR last season. Like, he is a special player. He's arguably a top 30, 35 player in the NBA, certainly boosted by playing with James Harden offensively. Defensively, he is an absolute monster. I'm really encouraged by the fact that John Collins like has shot really well from three the last 2 years. Last season was taking almost 4 a game, hitting 40% of them. Need to see if he can do it in a more competitive environment, but that makes if their starting lineup does end up being Harden, Beal, Kawhi, Collins, Zubac, and maybe they have Beal come off the bench and they sub in one of those stoppers in Batum or Derek Jones Jr. or Dunn. Like, there is so much optionality. They can survive regular season injuries. It wouldn't shock me at all if they were a 60-win team in the regular season. If everything goes together, I again just fall back on the idea. I have no idea how this works for 4 rounds. And you're saying best case scenario. For me, like, it is a miracle, more like it. Like, I just do not see a world where this team is able to hold it together at that level for 4 rounds.
You know, I think that they have a great coach in Ty Lue who, with that optionality, can maximize this group. But you bring up a great point about the regular season. It's kind of the chicken or the egg, where it's like, if we know going into it that the factors are, it's a big if that Kawhi and a big if that James Harden can get you through these high intense games, you have to avoid the play-in tournament. You cannot just statistically play 2 more highly impactful games, even to survive them, to play an OKC or to play a team like a Denver Nuggets in the first round again. So then you have to make the top 6, and then you have to hope for, I think you'd be hoping for a matchup with Golden State, who still has Steph and Jimmy Butler. You'd be hoping for a matchup with a non-Denver, and it'd be really tough still in that way. I would agree that legitimate is where you get hung up. Now, can they win a championship if everything went perfectly? Yes, miracles happen every day, Gavin, but they're not legitimate because there's so many what ifs about them. To me, they're the legitimate contenders.
This is the voice of someone coming off of seeing Fantastic Four. You were inspired, and now you believe in miracles. Sorry.
Yeah, now I believe in miracles. I'm ready to go. So go check out Fantastic Four. Go check out Locked On Clippers.
Not a sponsor. We have to.
Not a sponsor yet. They can cut the check though anytime they want to. Coming up, let's rank the best NBA Cup groups and play buy or sell. But first one's here right now, but our friends over at Game Time. Go check out Game Time today, because Game Time is fantastic. And if you've ever just decided last minute to go to a ball game with your friends or family, maybe it's game day today and you just, you know what? It's Sunday morning. Let's go to the matinee today. Let's go to the old ballpark. That's exactly what Game Time is all about. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, even invite a bigger group to go with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. It is incredible where you go on the app and prices actually drop closer to first pitch. So it's an incredible last-minute deal, clear seat views, and lowest price guarantees that takes the worry out of buying tickets. And I love the fact that the price you see, the price you get, no surprise fees at checkout. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA at $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, talking about the Clippers, talking about the NBA Cup, and playing a nice game of buy or sell, where Gavin has a lot of great topics for buy or sell, including about Jalen Green, who I love, and so he knows that I'm a big Jalen Green guy. We have to dive into him. But first, let's talk NBA Cup. So, Gavin, the NBA Cup is entering year 3, second name of the in-season tournament, now known as the NBA Cup. First and foremost, do you think that this is working? Do you think that the NBA Cup is working as an entity?
No, not really. I don't know. I'm going to throw that right back at you. Do you honestly care about it?
You know, I look at it, and maybe it's the optimism that I always have coursing through my veins, but they sold it to Amazon with their new TV partners. It's obviously something that they want to make work. And I think that for people our age and older, it does not matter at all. But there will become a time in this life cycle that younger generations of fans only know the NBA Cup. They only know a world in which it exists. They only know a world in which it matters. And that's where you're trying to catch in and make it legitimate. It's not about our generation and up. It's about the generations coming after us. And to me, I look at it as in a world in which you can get mad about everything. Like you can just complain, and complaining sells. The NBA Cup is not something to complain about because at worst, just ignore the cup standings and worry about the standings that you followed your entire life because the games still count until the championship game as regular season games. So you can choose to just completely ignore this thing until championship day and follow the sport the exact same way you always have. And then you can also add in the NBA Cup if you choose to involve yourself in it. So it's kind of a no-lose scenario for the league, especially if the marketing works for the younger generation and they get hooked onto it. And then you look at the schedule. The thing I don't like about it, but also love about it, it's a catch-22. I think that they're going to have to tweak some things around it, is they do a great job of spacing out the schedule around the cup games because they don't want to play back-to-backs. They don't want any excuses for these games not to be competitive. And in these cup games, if you can get past the colorful courts, you can see really good basketball in the NBA Cup. But the piper needs to be paid at some point. And in January and February, teams are playing these jam-packed schedules, which on the back end turns into bad basketball. So they've got to find a way to get this schedule more spacious in general. But as far as the NBA Cup goes, I think it's only a net win for the league.
Yeah, it does lead to competitive basketball, which is incredibly cool. The games are fun. You can feel the intensity. I mean, even there was a very real playoff feel to Oklahoma City, Milwaukee in the final last year. And it felt like a growing up moment for Oklahoma City against the team that had won a title 3 years ago. And they're like, all right, this is what it's like to be punched in the mouth. This is what it's like to have Giannis going full tilt against you for 40 minutes and learning how to deal with that probably help them down the road. So no argument there. I think that's incredibly cool. I think we talked about it at the time. Like, I just think there has to be some discernible reward because at times, like 2 years in a row, like older teams, the Bucks last year, I believe the Lakers before that, right, pushed through, won it, and like at times struggled from there and had no real playoff success after doing so. And it's this thing that like you push so incredibly hard for, and these guys really compete for because they want to reward the end of bench guys with money that really makes a big difference in their life, and that's fantastic. But like, give me something that affects the season. Like, I've argued at a minimum, like the championship game that doesn't count for anything, give that team an extra win in the standings. Like, at a maximum, guarantee a play-in spot. And if they're already a top 6 seed, give them home court advantage. Like give it some real value and create like high leverage single elimination basketball in the NBA season. Because right now, just the glory of the cup, like I don't, maybe the players are buying into it. I think they're more so buying into the money. Like, I don't really see the inherent value there. And I think the stakes, similar to the All-Star game, could be dramatically ramped up if it had like real in-season implications for these teams.
Yeah, and the Thunder talked about the money aspect when they were going through it, about how, you know, the end of the bench guys would talk to Shea about, hey, you got to go play great today because the money's on the line. And it does matter. Like, I know that we look at this through the prism of our favorite players, which our favorite players in the NBA are often getting paid a ton of money to where the extra money from the NBA Cup doesn't matter. But it really matters for players like 6 through 18. It really matters, including the two-way guys. So I do think that element is what causes some of the competitiveness from players. It's just extra national TV spotlights as well, especially for teams who can go on a run that aren't baked in to the national TV schedule enough. But it was interesting to hear the Thunder talk about the NBA Cup preparing them in the finals. Like they were talking about how like the NBA Cup media day prepared them for finals media day, how the intensity of that Bucks game prepared them for like the intensity of these games for a team that had only gone through one true playoff run up until this season. So it is interesting to see the more data points that we get, how much does this help? The only other tweak I would make for this NBA Cup, I know that they want to make Vegas work. And to me, if you want to make Vegas work, you've got to do what Steve Ballmer did for the Clippers in the playoffs, what the Pacers did for their employees in the playoffs. You've got to either force teams to pay for fans to pack that stadium out, give them all expense trips to Vegas in that holiday season and get them there to Vegas, if that's the market where you want this to work, or move it to a neutral site in an actual basketball city that is just enthralled with basketball. I think about New York, that just they love any basketball that's being played, no matter if the Knicks are involved or not. Like put these big stars in a market that cares about them, in a market where they're truly the main attraction. Or if you want to make Vegas work, force these billion-dollar companies to fly out season ticket holders, to fly out fans for a chance like this at the NBA Cup in an extra game in which you're going to get the additional revenue anyway. So that's where I'm at in the NBA Cup. Now the Cup groups are all we know, and the cup games are all we know about the schedule so far. The NBA schedule is historically announced in mid-August. We expect that to happen again. But, Gavin, let's rank the NBA Cup groups. Who is your favorite NBA Cup group? I'd be shocked if we have a different answer.
I was kind of debating this, so maybe we will ultimately. But mine was West Group C: Rockets, Nuggets, Warriors, Blazers, Spurs. Was that yours, or did you have a different one?
That was my number one with a bullet, and I didn't even really debate it. I think that you look at the two teams who improved the most this offseason to me, Denver and Houston in the same vein. You have Steph and Jimmy. You have two teams in Portland and San Antonio who I think will take this really seriously and go all out to win these games, because not only do they count as, regular season games as two teams that are playing and playoff hopefuls, but it just gets you onto that bigger stage and kind of as a chance to, if you want to buy into the hokey stuff, like a chance to prove yourself or whatever. So I think that from top to bottom in Group C, who is the team that you're just rolling over or passing over, whereas every other group to me includes a team that is either just terrible or a team that you can see mailing it in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even just the two teams at the bottom of that group, if we can zoom in on them. I mean, there's a world where Victor Wembanyama is just like the second best player in the world after the season. There isn't much debate about that. And he's like the best defensive player on earth, and he's putting up 30 points and 13 rebounds. He was training with monks for 2 weeks this summer. We don't know what we're going to see from the guy, and that Spurs team is really loaded. I don't think the backcourt totally makes sense with three non-shooting guards, but I'm incredibly excited to see De'Aaron Fox and Wemby got 5 games together. I want to see them play more together. The team has a ton of depth. Dylan Harper's thrilling. The Blazers had a 15-game stretch in the second half of the year where they were the best defense in basketball. You add Drew Holiday, the best defensive guard of the last decade, into that mix. Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson with Anthony Simons gone, room to take a step forward. Like those are just two of the teams, period, I'm most excited to watch next year. So I cannot wait to watch that group play out. My second one, curious if you had the same one, was West Group B: Lakers, Clippers, Grizzlies, Mavs, Pelicans. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly my number 2 as well. I think that when you look at it, the Pelicans are the only team that you can kind of shoo away. Memphis, we'll see. Memphis has some preseason injuries that, because of the starting point being Halloween for the NBA Cup, like the injuries to Edey, the injuries to Jaren Jackson Jr. could linger into the Cup to where you don't want to press the issue if you're Memphis. Obviously, Kyrie is out for Dallas, but I think that Dallas's defense is still good enough to keep them afloat in the regular season and win games. So I think that at minimum, you have 3 good teams in this group, and at maximum, you have 4.
Yeah, I want to see Cooper Flagg play high leverage games, and that's really our first opportunity since watching him in the Final Four. So I'm incredibly excited for that. And like Clippers, Lakers with some stakes. Like we got it all throughout that 2019-20 season. It was epic. Obviously, LeBron's level of investment will play a big role in how interesting those games are and how interesting the Lakers are, period. But I'm weirdly, as someone who followed the Suns the last decade plus, I'm a big believer in DeAndre Ayton there. I think it's a good fit with Luka. I think, and just Luka Kawhi has always been epic. So I think that has a lot of potential. My third one, East Group B: Celtics, Pistons, Nets, Magic, Sixers. What do you think of that?
So I have East Group B at the very bottom. I need you to sell me on how they're number 3 for you.
Okay. All right. I think the Magic are incredibly fun. And that's first, quote unquote, high stakes games for that team. I think those games, like against a Magic team that's young and hungry and clearly something to prove, and a Pistons team that's young and hungry and clearly something to prove, is fascinating. The Celtics, not healthy, don't really have a starting front court of note, but there'll be some pride there. And there'll be a game where Peyton Pritchard scores 35. And the Sixers, like, if you catch them on the right stretch, I know there's a lot of ifs, but that's why they're my number 3. Like the way they've drafted and just stacked their backcourt, you get Joel Embiid for some of those games, you get Paul George for some of those games. They can pull off an upset or two, but really it's the Magic and Pistons, I think, are going to be cutthroat about trying to win the cup. And that those games in particular will be really fascinating to me.
Yeah, so you hit on my biggest fear. If you promised me that Embiid and Paul George were going to play in the NBA Cup and play the entire way, I would put this where you have them at number 3. The fear of Philadelphia, I've got to protect myself at some point because, Gavin, I've been a host at Locked On since May of 2020. Every single year, I've picked Philadelphia in the top 3 of the East. Every single year.
That's
I'm once again falling for Philadelphia. And I've got to try to get my brain rewired to not fall for them again because my latest hot take was that Philadelphia would get home court in the East. So I'm going to protect myself a little bit. I'm going to guard myself with the NBA Cup and put them in the bottom spot. But I do like it if we get a healthy Philadelphia, because then I know that Orlando's going to care about this. I know that they will. You mentioned the pride in Boston. I think that Boston is a smidge underrated heading into this year. Not that they're title contenders, but I think that the step back from them is a little bit dramatized right now in the midst of the injury to Tatum, in the midst of some of these moves that they've made. And then I do still like Detroit, like you mentioned there, but I had your Knicks at number 3 with the Bucks. I think that those two teams are exceptionally interesting this season in general, and getting to see them play in the NBA Cup will be fun. I like the Bulls as a early, what are they team? I don't like them as a good team. I don't know that they're going to be an awful team. What are they in the opening stages of the season? And so I graded this on a curve, not in the sense of like who I think could win the cup, because I think that Group B in the East has way more teams who could win the cup than Group C. But just in the sense of who am I interested in watching early on, I want to get in early on the Bulls. I want to get in early on Miami. And then with the Hornets' injury history, they can only play in the season early with that team. So that's why I found East Group C a little bit more compelling. And then I have West Group A at number 4, which I think is obviously the worst group in the West. But you do get OKC, who's the best team in the NBA. You do get Minnesota, who's been to back-to-back West Finals. And then, like them or not, Sabonis and the Kings, like they find a way to raise their floor enough to be competitive. I'm interested to see what Phoenix looks like with the new look of their team. And then the Utah Jazz are there too. So that's who I have at number 4. And then obviously that only leaves East Group A at number 5 for me.
Yeah, we were in alignment on the first two, exactly inverted. Otherwise, East Group C was last for me, just because I think the Knicks are the only good team in that group, and it's as simple as that. I had East Group A over West Group A, but really these two are parallels to me, because I just think the top two in both is extremely fascinating, right? Cavs, Hawks. I think like had a really nice showing in the in the NBA Cup last year, upsetting the Knicks. They're going to be cutthroat. The Cavs trying to prove something. They're going to be cutthroat. The Pacers will be competitive as hell, even if it doesn't go anywhere down Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton. And, the Wolves are going to be going for the Thunder's neck once again, like they did all regular season, like they did ultimately unsuccessfully, but had their moments in that Western Conference Finals. I think those specific matchups will be extremely fun. So they're pretty interchangeable, but yeah, that's my take on it. And you know what, Rylan, you've succeeded in this segment because you found a way to talk me into the NBA Cup. A hater. I'm excited now. I'm into it. Let's go. I'm ready for NBA basketball.
Go. We're NBA Cup heads, at least on Saturday night on Locked On NBA Game Night. Coming up, let's play our weekly edition of Buy or Sell. We're back on Locked On NBA Game Night, talking NBA action on this Saturday night. Gavin, you put together this week's Buy or Sell, and you have some great options, including number 1, Jalen Green being a viable point guard for the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Green is a guy that I predicted would win 2 scoring titles in his career. Off to a bad start on that prediction of him pre-draft. Are you buying or selling Jalen Green in Phoenix?
Hey, it's good for winning a scoring title? Some time in the desert, man. Just Devin Booker. Devin takes off the last 30 games. Jalen Green gets 40 shots. Who knows? No, I'm not buying it. This was one of the weirder stories of the summer. John Gambadoro, who does a great job reporting on the Suns, comes out one day, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting this. This is my understanding. It says Devin Booker is going to be the point guard for the Suns. Comes out the next day and says now Jalen Green is going to be the point guard for the Suns. Unlike you, I was a big fan coming out of G League Ignite. I have not been a big believer in what he's done in the NBA. Our buddy Jackson Gatlin was fond of highlighting this, much to the chagrin of the Rockets front office. But Houston, whatever the combo was, consistently bad with him on the floor. -8 net rating with him on the floor last season. Only played point guard 7% of the time last year. His career high was 18% back in 22-23. That doesn't scream ready to play point guard. His assist rate was way up last year. His assist rate relative to his usage was only 27th percentile for a player that cleaned the glass profiles as a combo guard. So I don't really see the basketball IQ to pull it off at this point, especially with a very young cast around him. I mean, who's going to be playing for the Suns, right? It's going to be Kaman Malawach at times. It's going to be Ryan Dunn, who played a big role last year. It's going to be Oso Ighodaro. It's going to be Mark Williams, who's still in his early 20s. Yes, there are some supplemental vets to help him out. I just don't think this is really an ideal ecosystem in one of the more competitive Western conferences in recent memory to speed run Jalen Green as a point guard. So no, I'm selling it.
I'm selling him as a point guard. I'm buying him as a player, though. He looked way more comfortable in his NBA career whenever he was not sharing the floor at Şengün. A change of scenery is going to be great for him. Playing off of Booker could be good for him, could be bad for him because he's going to have to play point guard. But it's like the point guard experiment. I don't know that it'll work. The ability to showcase who he is as a combo guard, I think, will work in Phoenix and just elevate his status a little bit in the league. There's also an element here of like, there's not much worse he can do, like, in the sense of the way that we talk about Jalen Green from an NBA media standpoint and the way he's discussed can't get much lower than this to where it has to be somewhat better in a new environment if he's any good at all, which I still believe that he's a talented basketball player. So I'm going to buy a little bit on Jalen Green, but this is one of the easier buys for me. Atlanta Hawks, a dark horse at the number 1 seed out east. Gavin, are you buying in the Hawks as I am?
Buy. I think we're both we're usually on the same page, Rylan. I think again we're unified on this. I think the biggest argument for selling it is that I think Cleveland is just an incredibly solid regular season team. Like there has rarely been a team in recent NBA history that I am extremely confident is going to win 60 games. And yet I remain like extremely skeptical that they have a championship ceiling. And that to me is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like I buy the depth. I buy Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland obviously has to get healthy, but I think they have enough to supplement that. So I do think they are still heavy favorites to 1 seed in the East. My New York Knicks, of course, are talented. They are deep. They will be a very good basketball team. But the Atlanta Hawks, best offseason in the NBA. I think even over the Houston Rockets. We talked about it the other week, but I think if Kristaps Porzingis is healthy, extremely big if, him and Trae Young, one of the deadliest screening combos in the NBA. I really don't know how you guard that. I guess you switch it and you're putting someone presumably very short on Kristaps Porzingis and saying, hey, last year, late in the season, you struggled to isolate one-on-one against the switch. But other than that, I don't really know what you do. All their wings a year better. Jalen Johnson, I think, potential for like a third team all-NBA type of season. Zach Ricochet blew a lot of people away last year. Dyson Daniels, elite perimeter defender. The depth is there. Tons of shooting. Nikhil Alexander-Walker's a killer. I just love their roster. And there's a world where it all comes together. They win 56, 57 games. Cleveland just isn't as healthy, and they take the 1 seed.
So I agree 100% with every point you just laid out. So there's no point for me to repeat them. My only additional point would be on July 26th right now, after the moves hit the 4 teams in the East that we think are legitimate of New York, of Cleveland, of Orlando, and Atlanta. If on July 26th you don't feel like you can get the 1 seed out East, then you're probably in a bad spot. Whereas I think that all 4 teams should legitimately feel like, look, we can put together a season that's the 1 seed good in the Eastern Conference and could be 1 seed in the NBA good because of the bottom of the East just beating up on them routinely. So I do think that Atlanta, along with New York and Cleveland and Orlando, should feel like they're number 1 seed good. But I'm very curious to get your perspective on this one that you conjured up. Could OKC challenge for the all-time single season wins record, buy or sell?
Rylan, I want a production credit when this is an August episode of Locked on Thunder for you, but I absolutely buy it. We saw Golden State coming off a championship, and yet some lingering doubts, I think, when Golden State won just over exactly a decade before Oklahoma City. So I'll continue these historical parallel, or, it was 15, 16, sorry, 9 years before Oklahoma City did. We saw him come off a title. A lot of people claimed, well, Cleveland wasn't healthy, right? Kyrie Irving was hurt. Kevin Love was hurt. Very similar for the Pacers. They, hey, Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get hurt. He was cooking in that game. Oklahoma City chokes it away. They don't win a championship. I might have even said similar stuff. I think there will be a little FU edge. They are deeper with Topic added into the mix. You are presumably getting a much healthier Chet season for a team that already won in the high 60s. I think this is a team that is going to come out and look to just eviscerate the rest of the NBA. And I don't really see the team that's going to stop them, Rylan. So I'm high on your Thunder, potentially winning 73, 74 games next year.
What's interesting about your point is that last year they won 68 games, and they did so while being healthy 8.5% of the time, that the Thunder will gladly tell you. And they won even in games that they were investigated for not tanking, but investigated for massaging the injury report, right? Because they weren't tanking, they were just resting. And yet they still won that game that they got investigated for. That's how deep this team is. So then you look at it and say, well, what if they do just rest their guys, but yet they're still good enough to win? Because their version of resting is still playing NBA caliber players 1 through 18, unlike other NBA squads. but I'm going to have to sell this because I think that OKC should and will prioritize that rest versus getting the all-time record. Where you look at this season and it's like, even whenever they were in a neck and neck battle with Cleveland for the number 1 overall seed, they didn't pivot how they were handling regular season games. They still found rest within games. They still took nights off while Cleveland was, kind of down their neck for that 1 seed, and it all worked out in the end. But a team that just played 2 7-game series and went to the last possible date of the NBA calendar deep into June and expects to go again deep into June, I think that they're going to prioritize the NBA playoffs. And there's an argument to be made that, like, sometimes you get into that habit of, like, taking your foot off the gas a little bit in the regular season and it bites you later on. If Boston, for example, would have pushed even harder in the regular season, would they have been sharper from beyond the arc against that Knicks team in the playoffs? Who knows? But I'm going to sell it. But there are some very interesting points that you can convince me on to buy it, as you just did. And the last one, Gavin, Golden State. Will they trade Jonathan Kuminga by the start of the season?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I buy it. They've so clearly telegraphed they don't want him there. Steve Kerr has so clearly telegraphed they don't want him there. Jonathan Kuminga, I mean, he played his butt off in the second round after Steph Curry got hurt, so give him credit. But I think he's telegraphed that he's tired of being just sort of in the rotation, out of the rotation, in the rotation, out of the rotation. And I think he wants to be anywhere else. I think they are playing hardball, and I think at a certain point they will give in, they'll move on from him. It's been clear for a while in my mind that neither side wants the relationship, and I think eventually he ends up a Sacramento King. But what do you think?
So I'm going to acknowledge that you made great points and that I more than not agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned it. We are always so agreeable on the buy or sell aspect of it, that because I do have doubts that they can get this done for the reasons that you said, like whenever you're telegraphing you don't want a guy, his value could not get any lower on top of needing a contract for Jonathan Kuminga. But I think that at the end of the day, they're just going to say, well, it makes more sense, financially, makes more sense value-wise to bring him into the team for the start of the season. So I'm going to sell that he's going to be off the team by the start of the year, and we can track who's right or wrong on this, because I think it is so 50-50 that I don't have a staunch opinion of like which avenue it's going to go for Kuminga, which means we get to track Jalen Green production, which is my favorite thing to do. We get to track if OKC will threaten the win record, and we get to track Jonathan Kuminga's landing spot by October, all off of this one show, Gavin, which is why I love doing NBA Game Night Saturdays with Gavin Schall, Locked On Knicks. I'm Rylan Stiles, with Locked On Thunder. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.